Okay, here we are in Hatch, and the first thing that we're going to do is import our artwork that we created. So here is our artwork. And our goal here is to create an embroidery file that we're going to be very pleased with to stitch out on a garment. We're not really teaching proper embroidery digitizing techniques or anything like that. We're coming at this from the angle of you just downloaded the trial version of Hatch, you've got a logo, you want to try and create an embroidery file for it. What are some basic functions here in Hatch that you can utilize that I think you'll run into with every single embroidery file you come across to be able to create an embroidery design fairly quickly and easily that you're going to be pretty pleased with. All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and change the size of our design for a left chest. I'm using 3.85 for the size of my left chest. And what we're going to do is we're going to utilize the function in Hatch called Auto Digitize. And we're going to choose this first function, Auto Digitize Instant Embroidery. And that's it, folks. We now have an embroidery file. We're ready to stitch. Could we stitch this? Oh, sure, we could stitch it. But it's a hot mess. But luckily, they have some great tools in Hatch that'll allow us to get the kind of result that we'll be happy with on our garment. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the color. I just selected the entire design. We're going to give it all one color. Now, when we were in CorelDRAW, we deliberately did some things to the drawing. Let me get rid of my stitches. We deliberately did something to the artwork so that Hatch could do a better job of determining what was what. And so here is a perfect example. So we have a palm tree that's one giant blob, and then we have a palm tree that's made up of several smaller blobs. If we turn our stitches on, what do you see? This is much more visually appealing than this. I think we can all agree on that. And that's because we gave the software some more details, more definition of what it is we wanted to stitch. So that's a common thing that you're going to have to do when you start learning all the digitizing tools here in Hatch. So one other thing that we can do to perhaps make this stitch out a little bit better. Now, I've stitched out a lot of things, and so I know what, just visually looking at it, is it going to look good or is it not going to look good when we actually stitch it out? Sometimes what we're looking here on screen looks bad, but when we actually stitch it out, it's perfectly fine. So, but that comes with experience. So the one thing that I don't know, I could argue that might actually improve this design just a little bit is you see, for example, here, all of these stitches are going in the same direction. Okay, that's what Hatch does for us by default. But if we come in here and go to our digitizing tab, we can do this, add stitch angle. And so we're just going to come in here and add some stitch angles, hit the enter key, and now the debate begins. Does this look better that it has kind of a multitude of angles, or does this look better where it just has one straight set of angles? Now, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, because we are going to stitch this design out, I'm going to say that it doesn't matter. I've been doing this long enough to me, I don't think you'll see the difference. But tell you what, let's go ahead and add the stitch angles to this one. We'll do the top two. We'll leave the bottom two the way they are. And then you guys just tell me what you think once you see the stitch out. How big a deal is it? Okay, so there we go. Little bit more definition on the angle of the stitches. I don't know. This is all going to go in one direction. Now this, I do think I want to change the stitch angle on. I do think this would look better going this direction. Okay, that's purely a personal preference though. Okay, now see that stitch angle line and all these other nodes? If you hover just right, you see where it says angle 142? That's when you know you've got that stitch angle line and you can modify it. Otherwise, you've got a node. So we're going to come over here. There's my stitch angle line. I can modify it. I don't know where it's at now. Did I just see it? You just kind of, because look, there's a whole gaggle of nodes there, so I don't know where it's at. There it is. So I don't know. So I'm just going to change that stitch angle a little bit. I think that'll look a little bit better. Now here for the letter H, let's turn off stitches. Look at our artwork. This is one blob. If we click on that, but see how it's actually two objects, but Hatch automatically broke it right there. But look at it, did not do that for our letter A. So that's a problem, because if we look at our stitches, that's a hot mess. That does not look good. Okay, so how do we fix it? Well, it's super simple. So we're going to come in here to the edit objects, because we want to edit this object, and we want to take our knife tool and we're just going to cut our A right there. Okay, anyone can do that. We're going to go to our reshape tool, and these nodes, we're just going to select all of them and delete them all. And then we're going to go ahead and delete this one. And you see where that kind of brought this back to the columns, right? So let's go ahead and move our stitch angle as long as we're here. That's what that function is. And look at our stitches. Ah, see? Now we're on to something. But look at, we missed our bottom, our horizontal piece. But that's okay, because what we'll do is we'll just come in here, go to the Digitize menu, and let's choose the Digitize Close Shape. We have the artwork in the background, kind of guide us. Now you can see that I deliberately overlapped. Now we're going to have to change our stitch angle. So now we have our stitch angle, but I'm deliberately overlapping because in the real world, when we would stitch it, that's how it would actually stitch out. Okay, so now this object here is object 3, so that means this piece needs to be object 2. So we'll just drag it up here. So it is the second object 2. So that has to stitch first. And now you can see how good it looks. So we're going to go ahead and select our whole design. Let's give it a color. Let's get rid of this training text because we're definitely not going to use that. That's too tiny. We're going to have to use a digitized font. When you're dealing with little bitty fonts like that, you really want to use a pre-digitized font. Now there's a couple of things about this. The training text is really too tiny for such a small design that we're doing. I don't like how it's this far spaced apart. To me, it's hard to read that way. So we will utilize a lettering, a pre-digitized font here in Hatch to add the training portion of the design. Okay. So now let's take a look at this letter R. You can see, again, it's a hot mess because all the stitch angles are going one way. It's looking at this as one big blob, where if you remember our artwork, we deliberately divided our P so Hatch would look at each color as a separate object essentially, and would give us a better embroidery result. So let's look at our stitches again. Now, this is object 22 and this is object 16. So we want this to stitch first before our vertical here. So, but we do want to have a bit more overlap. Now, once you've kind of been digitizing for a while and know how much overlap you should have, I'm kind of exaggerating here on the overlap, but when you're digitizing fonts, you do want some overlap like that, okay? Now you see how the top of this P is just a little bit wonky. It's a little bit like almost like a rounded corner. If we select this, you have to kind of finesse these notes a little bit. So I'm going to finesse this one just a little bit, but to come over here, and then I'm going to finesse this one a little bit. Might finesse all these. Let's see here. So let's go back and bring this back up. So I don't know. I like that kind of nice crisp corner a lot better like that. Okay? So those are just, when you're playing around with stuff, you can kind of modify that however you like. Now, next thing is this other piece here. So you see, again, all these stitches going all one direction. The auto-digitizing function is going to give you that. It's going to give you more or less all one direction most of the time. But if you come in here to the add stitch angle, you can manipulate those stitch angles, and you can tell it, hey, put it this way here, put it this way there. And then when you do that, you get this. So you get a nice curvature of stitch angles. See there? Much better. Okay. Now here at our letter E, we've got a couple things going on. We have this end cap is weird, and then these have weird where it comes around the corner. So we're going to fix both of those issues. So we're going to go into the reshape function. I see this all the time, so that's why I decided to bring it up here. We're just going to move those two nodes, and you can see now it's nice and square. And then the other issue is the angles. So we'll change those stitch angles, and you can see when we do that, that really tightens that up. Okay, and you can just kind of manipulate those till you're happy with them. We can add some more stitch angles. And then you could have a little bit better result around that corner. Just kind of modifying. And the same thing down here. We're going to bring this stitch angle in a little bit, bring this one in a little bit, and then we're going to add some more. Tiny little tweaks, but ultimately I do think it gives you a better looking result. And we do need to fix this end. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick. One thing I do want to point out is if we hover over this button, see it says it's the letter H is the shortcut key, the letter O is the shortcut key. So when we're selecting and then we're reshaping, we can switch back and forth using our shortcut keys, and that's a real big time saver. So if you kind of force yourself to learn those shortcut keys, that's really the way to go. All right, now we have this issue with this letter R is not looking good, but we have most of the R already made. So let's just go ahead and delete that R. Let's go ahead and duplicate this P. So we duplicate that P, and then all we have to do is add the tail. So we're going to come into the digitize, and then we're going to digitize the closed shape. Again, we are going to do some overlapping. And so now we have our tail made. So let's go back and look at, well, what object is this? This is object 23. That's object 24. And so I want my tail to stitch first, then this is going to cap it, then that's going to cap everything. Okay? So again, we'll back out here. We'll give this all color 72, I guess, is what we're using. So there is that one. So now I want to go ahead and get rid of this R because we've already, let's go ahead and hide our artwork for a second. We've already created an R. Give it a little bit of space. Now, if we really want to be picky, let's turn off our stitches and look at our artwork. You could see that this R is a little bit more straight up and down. And so if we really wanted to stay true to the original artwork, really easy enough to do, we can just modify this straight line. These turquoise represent curved lines and we want straight. We'll go ahead and move that over just a little bit. Move that over a little bit. So now we're kind of more true to the original artwork. So if we look at our stitches, you can see that is a little bit more true to the original artwork where it's a little bit more straight up and down. All right. So I'm going to skip ahead here and let's take a look at, I tell you what, let's get rid of this ugly palm tree and let's replace that with this pretty palm tree. We're going to duplicate it, slide it over, mirror it. We have our artwork showing. Remember, that is the D key on our keyboard. We can show and hide, show and hide, show and hide. Very important keyboard shortcut to remember. All right, so now we have, get rid of this. This is the mess that Hatch created for us. So it's not a big deal. We're going to come in here and with our select tool. We're going to start with our letter D here. We are going to reshape this. Let's see here. What do I want to do? I'm going to come in here, and all I did was created a node and kind of overlapped it a little bit. And we'll go back to our select tool. So you see how I overlapped that a little bit? And all we're going to do here is come into the edit objects and break that apart. So now we have two objects. And now what we're going to do is weld those two objects. Okay. Now we've got a bit of a mess here where this is intersecting with our trunk. And watch what happens when we hit reshape. That's what I was saying about our mess. Because look it, we got 100,000 nodes there. So we don't need 100,000 nodes. I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's remove our stitch angles. And then we can delete all these excess nodes that we do not need. And then we are going to have just a little bit of overlap here. So I'm just adding a couple of nodes. That amount of overlap should not hinder us whatsoever as far as stitching out goes. And now that's kind of what it looks like. Now again, all these are going in one angle and we don't want that. So we want a little bit better definition there. So we're going to click on add stitch angles and we're going to add some additional stitch angles. Make this look pretty. And this way too. And then down here, we need to add some pretty stitch angles. So it gives us a little bit better result when it's coming around the bend. And then we're going to level out here. And there we go. And so there you have a really good looking letter D. Now, we did add some overlap up top, so I'm going to add a little bit more underlay, I guess you could say. Add a few more stitches where that's going to just cap that off. Now you see how all these stitches are running that direction? I'm going to change that too. So let's go ahead and do that. There's our stitch angle here. That looks better. We're going to add some stitch angles so we can give this trunk a little bit more definition. Stitch angles can bend with the trunk that way. So you see, they're going this direction and then they're going the other direction. And I just think that'll look a little bit better. And then There we go. Now, I do not like the way this is ending up here, but that's okay, because we can modify that. And I think, yes, I like that better. Just a small tweak, but I definitely do like that better. And I'm going to nudge this up just a little bit. Okay, so yes, I do like the way that D looks now. So you see, with just some basic knowledge, we're able to, have something that is pretty acceptable. Now, with our letter N here, this is a hot mess because look at what Hatch did to us. That is not nice. So we're going to break it apart, and then we're going to come in here and select all of that mess, and then we're going to choose the weld function, and now it's welded. And now we're going to go to the reshape function, and we're going to remove stitch angles, get rid of all the stitch angles. That will just leave us one stitch angle. And we just have to hover over just right. Drives me crazy because we've got a stitch angle right on top of a node. And that happens so often. Drives me absolutely crazy. But so now we just have that horizontal stitch angle, which is going to be much nicer. So when we look at stitches, look at how nice that N is going to stitch out for us. Very, very nice. I could be very pleased with that. Okay. So now we just have our L and our A to fix, which that is going to be no problem. We've already kind of done that. We fixed that A earlier, didn't we? So this is basically going to be the same basic process. We also have something weird going at the top of our eye here, don't we? So all we have to do is click on our reshape tool. So let's reshape this. So remember, we brought that node over and we brought this node over, and that gave us a nice cap. We could do the same thing at the bottom. Move that over, move this over, and then we have a nice square cap. Okay. So that's simple enough. So then right here, our L, what are we going to do here? Our L and our A. Well, let's go ahead and select those and go to our reshape tool. And under edit objects, we're going to use the knife and we're going to cut our L and our A apart first of all. So let's do that. And then we're going to, let's go ahead and get rid of our stitches here. And then let's go ahead and use our knife again with our letter A. We've done that before, right? And then we're going to hit the reshape tool. And remember, we're going to delete these nodes right here in the middle back to the column. And then, let's zoom out a little bit. We're going to modify our stitch angle. We're going to clean all these nodes up over here. Oops. So we're going to clean all those up. Tell you what, we'll add one and then we'll clean them up. There we go. So you see how we kind of fixed that column there. And now we can take a step back and look at how nice that is. This looks good too, except we need to deal with the stitch angles over here. So we'll go ahead and add some stitch angles to our corner. So this already has a stitch angle. So let's go back to reshape and modify that. So I always start with one right in the corner, and then we'll add some stitch angles. Get this part squared away. So you can see that, and then makes that bend. And then we're going to add some more stitch angles to fix it going the other way. Okay, but now we've got kind of this weird thing happening, so we're just going to adjust the stitch angles that we have. So we don't have that weird thing going. So that looks good. And then back up top here, square that up a little bit up top, and that looks real good. So that takes care of that. Now, the only thing that's left basically then is the horizontal piece of our letter A. So we're going to turn off stitches, turn on artwork, and then we're going to go to our digitize function, and we're going to digitize the closed shape, and just like we had done previously, some overlap. I am probably exaggerating a little bit, but you get the idea. We're going to reshape this and change our stitch angle so it's up and down. And then we're going to, that's object 32, and this is object 9. So we want this to be object 8. So there you go. That, get rid of our artwork, is it in a nutshell. Now, the only other thing I might do here is I might give just a pinch of space between these letters a little bit. I don't know, I just think it might look just a little bit better. Just a tiny little bit of space. But that's really more or less a personal preference. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. So the only other thing to do then is to add our island text. So we can go ahead and do that with our lettering function here in Hatch. We are going to be using the block 2, and then we'll go ahead and type in training. That's going to pop it in full size. So this is a pre-digitized font inside of Hatch, and I do want to reshape this. I just want to show you what I was talking about. So you see how we have overlap, and you see how when we were doing it earlier, how this is coming around the bend here, automatically. You can see how they kind of did this with the A. That's interesting. How we have kind of this crisscross of the path, and that's what the resulting stitches are. But again, that horizontal piece, having that overlap, this is how they took care of the N. Again, some interesting overlapping function there with the pathing. And then our G here, a little bit of overlap there with our horizontal piece there. So I sometimes that's what I'll do. I'll look at the pathing of, these are experts that created these embroidery fonts. And so I just kind of mimic what they do, so to speak. But you can see this letter N is a lot, I think it is better looking than this N. But you can see the pathing. So if I get rid of the stitches, you can see what that pathing is, and to be able to create, and so you can kind of mimic the same thing up here if you wanted to. In my case, I think that's going to stitch out just fine, but I do like that tidy look just a little bit better. I'll be honest, I really do. But at any rate, we're going to make this text smaller, and we are going to modify the spacing. So I don't know exactly. So we're going to kind of mimic what we did originally, but not quite too crazy. So let my computer catch up. Now this is a little bit big. So I think it can be squatty a little bit. It's kind of a bit of a catch-22 because we do need it to be small, and I think that looks pretty good. but not too small where it's not going to be legible when we stitch it out. So I think this is going to be pretty good. Now, do you want a bonus tip before we finish off? I happen to know there's two things that I have to do with this logo. I have to stitch it on a polo shirt, like a knit polo shirt, and then I also have to stitch this out on beanies. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using a lay down stitch in both scenarios. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail about what a lay down stitch is, but there are some great videos on YouTube about what lay down stitches are. Um, but at any rate, we need a lay down stitch. So we're going to select our design, and then we're going to choose that lay down stitch function. Actually, we cannot select the design. We have to have nothing selected. I'm sorry. And then click on lay down. And then we have the options of what to do in here. So we're going to offset the shape. How much? I'm just going to go with the default right now. We are going to use 2 layers of stitching. And just we can specify the spacing, we could specify the length and angle and all that stuff, which all that is pretty cool. So we'll go ahead and hit the preview function, and then we can see what that looks like. Okay, and yes, that's going to be basically perfect. So like if we were sewing this on a towel, for example. And the towel is real thick, right? So the lay down stitches will mat it all down so that when we come back across with all of our satin stitching, it'll look really nice. So this lay down stitch will be the same color as the beanie. We'll try to match it up as closely as we can so you won't actually hardly even see it. But it will give us a really nice crisp, and the same thing on the polo, it'll give us a really nice crisp embroidery that way. So we're going to go with this. I think that looks pretty good. And yeah, I'm happy with all the details. We'll go ahead and click OK. And that gives us our lay down stitch. Now there's some holes here, but that's where we can go back in and reshape, and we can get rid of. So we'll go back in here, and we can go to reshape. Let's get rid of our stitches, and then we can just delete all of the insides and modify this just a little bit if we want to. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. Let's see, are there any other holes? There are not. All that looks good. Now, the only other thing that I think I want to at least experiment with is, instead of all this up and down, I think I might just prefer a straight line. So let's see. Let me zoom out a little bit here. Let's see if I just delete all of this. It didn't like that. So we're going to add a node there. And then we'll delete everything up to that new node. Okay. And that's no problem. We're just going to take this node and hit the space bar. And that's going to give us, a real hard straight line, which we probably wouldn't necessarily want. But it's close enough. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good, actually. I could move that. I think this could be moved up just a little bit now because we've got that straight line. I think that just that small little tweak. We'll look at its stitches again. Yes, I like that straight line rather than all that in and out, in and out, in and out of the lettering. Now being able to see my stitches, I think maybe I will come down just a little bit. such minute tweaking, you know, it really probably should matter. Um, so yeah, I think I like that look a little bit better. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I hope that will kind of take you away from being scared about uh, trying this, trying to use Hatch to uh, create your embroidery designs. Now, the one thing that we did not talk about at all is the sequencing. I am going to go back in here and modify this design for all the sequencing and kind of, what do you call that? Perfect the design so that the thread jumps are to a minimum and thread trims are to a minimum and all those things. So this design is going to get tweaked a little bit, but we could definitely stitch this out right now. Yes, we've got a million thread trims in there, but at the end of the day, we would have a sharp looking design, and that's ultimately what we're after. We want a nice, beautiful, finished design. So, so at any rate, that's all I have for this video. And like I said, I really hope you enjoyed it and learned some of just the very basics of working with embroidery designs here in Hatch.